Get out, Dad. You can't stay here anymore. It's my house now. The words didn't make sense. My own son, telling me to leave the home I'd poured 40 years of my life into? I thought maybe it was a cruel joke, the kind young folks sometimes played, until he threw my old canvas duffel bag onto the worn rug near my feet. It landed with a soft thud, a sound that echoed the closing of a door inside my chest. He pulled open the front door, the late afternoon rain already splattering onto the porch. "Go on," he said, his face hard, eyes avoiding mine. The last thing I saw as he slammed the door shut was the portrait of Elaine hanging on the wall above the fireplace. Her smile seemed to follow me, full of sorrow, watching me leave the life we had shared, the sanctuary we had created brick by painful brick. I stood there on the porch, the cold rain soaking through my thin jacket, listening to the lock click shut behind me. That night, standing alone in the downpour, a 71-year-old man with nowhere to go, I finally understood. My only son had truly cast me out. I didn't know it yet, but that was only the beginning of how far his betrayal would go. Shivering, I stumbled off the porch and walked the short distance to the Carson's house next door. John and Mary Carson, we'd shared fences and barbecues for 30 years. They knew Elaine, watched Tyler grow up. Surely, they'd offer a place to stay, at least for the night. I knocked, the sound loud in the rainy quiet. I saw a light flick on inside. Then just as quickly, it flicked off again, plunging the front window into darkness. Silence. No one came to the door. Confused and cold, I tried the Millers across the street. Same thing. The porch light was on when I reached their walkway, but before my knuckles even touched the wood, darkness. They were home. I could hear their television murmuring. They just weren't home for me. By the third house, the Watsons 2 doors down, I stopped trying. Word travels fast in a small town, faster than kindness it seemed. Walter Kane, kicked out by his own boy. My breath came out in white puffs in the cold night air. The rain plastered my thinning hair to my scalp. Standing on that empty sidewalk, under the judging eyes of dark windows, I felt smaller, more insignificant than I had ever felt in my entire life. Then, through the misty rain and fog settling over the street, I saw a figure standing silently across the road, just watching me from the shadows of the old oak tree. I ended up behind Miller's gas station that night. The gravel was damp, the air smelled of gasoline and rain. I found a relatively dry spot under the overhang near the back dumpster and huddled there, pulling my old coat tighter around me. It wasn't much, but it offered some shelter from the wind. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tyler's face, cold and unfamiliar. I saw Elaine's portrait, her eyes filled with a sadness I couldn't bear. I thought of her words, something she used to say when times got tough. Home isn't walls, Walt. It's the people in it. But the people, my people, had changed. Or maybe they'd always been this way, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. The rumble of trucks passing on the highway nearby was a constant reminder of my displacement. I wasn't just a man without a roof over his head. I felt like I didn't exist anymore. Kicked out, ignored, invisible. I pressed my face into the rough fabric of my coat sleeve, trying to block out the cold and the shame. I was Walter Kane, a man who'd worked hard, loved his wife, raised his son. How had it come to this? Hiding behind a gas station like a stray dog. Until the next morning, when the sun started to creep over the horizon, and a voice, quiet and unexpected, called my name. The sun was just starting to burn off the morning mist when the back door of the gas station creaked open. A woman, maybe in her late 30s, with tired eyes but a kind face, stepped out holding 2 steaming cups. She wore the blue smock of Miller's Gas. She walked directly towards me. "Mr. Kane?" "Walter," I nodded, pushing myself up stiffly from the cold ground, feeling the shame wash over me again. She handed me one of the cups. "Coffee. Black, 2 sugars, right? Elaine always said that's how you took it." The warmth spread through my numb fingers. I took a sip, the hot liquid a small comfort in the vastness of my misery. "I'm Donna," she said, her voice gentle. "I work the morning shift here. You're Tyler's dad." I just nodded again, unable to meet her eyes. "I saw you last night, saw the neighbors. Well, I saw how they acted." She sighed, a puff of white in the cool air. "Then I know the truth," she said, her gaze steady and compassionate. "You deserve better." Those 5 simple words, "you deserve better," hit me harder than Tyler's anger. They were the first kindness I'd received, the first acknowledgement that maybe I wasn't the one in the wrong. That small cup of coffee, that quiet statement of support, became the first spark. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about finding a different kind of strength, a quiet revenge built not on fists, but on reclaiming what was right. And Donna knew something about my son that I didn't. Donna leaned against the cold brick wall of the gas station, taking a slow sip of her own coffee. "Look, Mr. Kane," she started, her voice lower now, more serious. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I heard something a few weeks back. Tyler was in here with that friend of his, Mike, bragging." My stomach tightened. Bragging about what? He was laughing. Donna continued, shaking her head slightly. "Said he'd finally gotten the house officially in his name, free and clear. Said something about how you and Mrs. Kane signed it over thinking you were doing him a favor, but really, you just gave him all the power." The coffee suddenly tasted bitter in my mouth. Elaine and I had transferred the deed to him. It was a few months before she passed, when the cancer was bad. We thought it would give him security, keep the house in the family, make things easier when we were gone. We trusted him. He knew that. He knew we did it out of love, out of a desire for his future stability, and he twisted it. He saw our kindness not as a gift, but as a loophole, a way to gain control and ultimately push me out. My biggest mistake wasn't just trusting Tyler. It was failing to see the greed that had apparently taken root in his heart, a greed that had completely overshadowed any love or respect he might have once felt for his parents or the home they built. But greed leaves a trail, doesn't it? It makes people careless, boastful, and I was about to start following that trail, step by painstaking step. Donna pointed towards the back of the gas station lot, where an old, slightly rusty camper sat parked near the fence line. "It was my dad's," she explained. "Hasn't been used in years, but it's dry inside. Got a small heater that still works. It's not much, but it's better than sleeping out here." I looked at the camper, then back at Donna, overwhelmed by her unexpected generosity after the coldness of my own neighbors. I don't know what to say, Donna. Thank you." She just waved a hand dismissively. "Don't mention it. Just pay it forward someday." That night, lying on the thin mattress in the small camper, the scent of dust and old vinyl filling the air, I felt something shift within me. It wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a starting point, a base camp for the battle ahead. I stared up at the cracked ceiling, the faint glow of the gas station sign filtering through the small window. I wouldn't let Tyler's betrayal be the final chapter of my story or of Elaine's legacy. I made myself a promise in that quiet darkness. I would reclaim what was rightfully mine. Not just for the house itself, for the wood and nails and shingles, but for the 40 years of love and sacrifice Elaine and I had poured into it. Her memory deserved more than this. I could almost hear her gentle voice whispering in the stillness. "Patience, Walt. Don't rush and angry. Make it count." The next morning, waking stiffly in the unfamiliar bed, I knew exactly who my first call needed to be. Harold Drayton had been my friend since high school and my lawyer for the past 30 years. He'd handled our wills, the paperwork when we bought the land, everything. His office was downtown, above the old bookstore. When I walked in, looking like I'd spent the night behind a gas station, which I had, his secretary's eyes widened, but she buzzed me right through. Harold stood up from behind his massive oak desk, his usual cheerful expression replaced with stunned disbelief. "Walt, what in God's name happened to you? You look like you've wrestled a bear." I sank into the leather chair opposite him, the exhaustion of the past few days hitting me all at once. I told him everything, starting with Tyler's cold words, the slammed door, the neighbors turning off their lights, Donna's kindness, the camper. Harold listened silently, his fingers steepled, his expression growing grimmer with each detail. When I finished, he let out a long, slow sigh. "That boy, I never thought he had that kind of cruelty in him, Walt." He leaned forward, his lawyerly focus kicking in. "Okay, let's talk options. You transferred the deed willingly before Elaine passed." "Yes, we thought it was the right thing to do, protect the house for him." "But did you fully understand the implications? Did Tyler explain that signing it over gave him the right to evict you? Was there any pressure, any hint of coercion, or did he mislead you about the effect of the transfer?" Hope, fragile but persistent, began to stir in my chest again. "He just said it was for estate planning, make things simpler later." Harold nodded slowly. "If you were misled, If you signed under duress or without full understanding, there might be a case for undue influence or lack of informed consent. We could fight this. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear this time. It was hope, shaky but real. But hope turned to shock when Harold leaned back and added thoughtfully, "And Walt, didn't Elaine have her own will drawn up separately, back when she first got sick?" Elaine's will. I hadn't thought about it in years. After she passed, reading legal documents was the last thing on my mind. Harold was right, though. She had met with him privately a couple of times after her diagnosis. She'd always been the planner, the one who thought ahead. Harold retrieved a copy from his files, but he also reminded me Elaine had given me a sealed copy stored in our old lockbox. That evening, back in the quiet solitude of the camper, I retrieved the small metal box from the storage unit where I kept a few of Elaine's personal things. My fingers fumbled with the key, the lock stiff from disuse. Inside, beneath old photographs and letters, was a thick envelope marked for Walter, private. My heart pounded as I broke the seal. Elaine's familiar, elegant handwriting filled the pages. It started with words of love, memories of our life together, things that made my eyes burn. Then it got to the practical matters. She confirmed leaving her jewelry and personal savings to Tyler, as we had discussed. But then came the part about the house. Her words were clear, precise, and written with the foresight only she possessed, regarding our home at 12 Maple Lane. While we have transferred the deed to Tyler for planning purposes, it is my explicit wish and directive that my beloved husband, Walter Kane, retains full and final rights to reside in and control the property for the duration of his natural life. Should Tyler ever attempt to remove Walter or sell the property against Walter's wishes during Walter's lifetime, this provision serves as my final testimony to Walter's absolute right to the home we built together. My chest tightened, emotion lodging in my throat. Even from the grave, Elaine was still looking out for me, protecting me. She had seen a potential danger I had missed. This wasn't just a wish. It was a legally documented directive witnessed by Harold. Now, it was my turn to honor her foresight and protect the legacy she had so carefully guarded. Armed with Elaine's will, Harold immediately filed for an injunction to prevent Tyler from selling or further mortgaging the property. A temporary restraining order was granted, and the official notice would be served to Tyler within days. The legal gears were turning. In the meantime, I settled into a strange routine. Mornings, I'd help Donna clean up around the gas station in exchange for coffee and use of the back office phone. Afternoons, I'd sit in my old car, parked discreetly down the street from my house, and watch. It felt wrong, spying on my own home, my own son, but I needed to understand what was happening there. Tyler certainly wasn't treating the place with care. He'd come home late most nights, sometimes stumbling. Cars I didn't recognize would pull into the driveway at all hours. And then there was Leah, his girlfriend. She'd moved in almost immediately after I was kicked out, strutting around the yard like she'd won a prize, tossing cigarette butts into Elaine's flower beds. I started keeping a journal, just like Harold suggested. Date, time, observations. October 12th, 10:30 p.m. Loud music from house, 2 unfamiliar cars in driveway. October 14th, 8 a.m. Leah threw trash bag on a porch instead of taking it to curb. It felt petty, but Harold said details mattered. This wasn't just about reclaiming ownership. It was about demonstrating Tyler's irresponsible behavior, his lack of respect for the property and its history. This quiet observation, this gathering of facts, felt more powerful than shouting. It was Elaine's way, patience, details, building a case. And one night, watching from the shadows, I saw something in that driveway that shifted everything from a family dispute to something much darker. It was Sam Peterson from the town planning office who gave me the next piece of the puzzle. I ran into him at the hardware store while picking up some supplies Donna needed. Sam looked uncomfortable when he saw me, shifting his weight and avoiding my eyes. "Walt, heard about you know. Tough situation." I just nodded, not wanting to discuss it. But then Sam leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Listen, something weird came across my desk last week. An application for a home equity loan against your place. Big one. Tyler's name on it." My blood ran cold. A loan against the house. He'd only had full control for a couple of weeks. "Did it go through?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Sam shook his head. "Nah, got flagged. Something about the appraisal value seemed off, inflated maybe. Plus, with the injunction Harold filed hitting the records yesterday, the bank put an immediate freeze on it. But Walt, Sam looked genuinely worried now. The amount he was asking for, it was way more than the house is worth, even with an inflated appraisal. He must be in deep trouble. Deep trouble. My heart hardened. This wasn't just about youthful irresponsibility anymore. Taking out a huge loan against the family home, possibly using questionable methods. He wasn't just being greedy. He was being reckless, desperate. That night, back in the camper, I looked up at the star-filled Indiana sky. Elaine, I whispered, the name catching in my throat. Our boy's losing his way. Badly. But there was no time for grief or disappointment. He was trying to leverage, possibly destroy, the very foundation Elaine and I had built. I wasn't about to stand by and watch him drag our legacy, her legacy, down into the mud with him. I needed concrete proof of what he'd done at the bank. And I knew the bank held the key. Harold arranged the meeting with Mr. Abernathy, the manager at County Trust Bank, the following Monday. We sat in his glass-walled office, the atmosphere formal and tense. Abernathy looked uncomfortable. Mr. Kane, Mr. Drayton, I understand you have concerns about a recent loan application on the property at 12 Maple Lane. Harold laid out our case calmly. The questionable transfer of deed, Elaine's will stipulating my lifetime residency rights, and the recently filed injunction. We have reason to believe, Harold concluded, that Tyler Kane may have misrepresented his financial situation or even submitted fraudulent documents in his loan application. Abernathy steepled his fingers, his expression troubled. Normally, client confidentiality would prevent me from discussing details. However, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Given the legal injunction and the irregularities we discovered during our own review, the bank is conducting an internal investigation. He confirmed Tyler had applied for a substantial home equity line of credit. The application was indeed flagged. There were discrepancies in the supporting financial documents provided, and one signature, purportedly yours, Mr. Kane, on a prior consent form from years ago, did not match our records. Forge my signature. Tyler had actually forged my name to try and secure a loan. The confirmation felt like a physical blow, even though I'd suspected it. The bank's internal investigation was now our official proof. The walls of Tyler's deception were crumbling faster than I'd imagined. But what Mr. Abernathy slid across the desk next nearly made my knees buckle. It was a copy of a bounce check from Tyler's account, dated 2 weeks ago, made out to a name I didn't recognize, for an amount that made my breath catch. Back in the camper that night, the image of that bounce check haunted me. $15,000. Made out to someone named Vinny G. Who was Vinny G, and why did my son owe him $15,000 he clearly didn't have? The implications were chilling. This wasn't just bank debt or reckless spending. This smelled like something dangerous. My worry for Tyler, buried deep beneath the anger and betrayal, flickered back to life. Was he involved in something illegal? Was he in danger? My thoughts were interrupted by my phone ringing, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. Reluctantly, I answered. Walter? Is that you? The voice was high-pitched, shaky. It took me a moment to place it. Leah, Tyler's girlfriend. Leah? What's wrong? It's Tyler, she sobbed, her voice cracking. He's losing it, Walter. He got some legal papers today, something about the house, and he just snapped. He's been drinking all day, pacing, throwing things. He keeps muttering about someone named Vinny coming for him, about needing money he doesn't have. My heart pounded. Vinny. So it was real. Leah, where is he now? He stormed out about an hour ago. Took the truck. Said he needed to fix things. Walter, I'm scared. He mentioned the gas station. He said something about needing to talk to you. Make you understand. He was coming here. Drunk, desperate, possibly unstable. Leah, listen carefully. Lock your doors. Don't let him back in if he returns. Call the police if you feel unsafe. Do you understand? Yes, but what about you? I can handle Tyler, I said, though my own hands were starting to shake. I hung up, my mind racing. He didn't know I already knew about the loan, the forgery, the bounced check, Vinny. He didn't know I was already steps ahead. And Leah, terrified and reaching out to me, had no idea she'd just become an unwitting pawn in the quiet strategy one was building. After Leah's call, I didn't wait for Tyler. I needed to see the house again, not as a spy from afar, but up close. I waited until I saw his truck peel out of the gas station lot. He must have driven by, seen my car wasn't there, and left again. Then I drove the familiar route back to Maple Lane under the cover of dusk. Parking a block away, I walked towards the house, my house. Even from a distance, the neglect was obvious. The lawn Elaine had meticulously cared for was patchy and overgrown with weeds. The porch railing had a broken spindle, dangling precariously. The porch light, the one we always left on as a welcome, was dark, the bulb clearly burned out. My heart ached. This wasn't just neglect. It felt like disrespect, an erasure of everything Elaine and I had built. I walked around back, my feet crunching on overgrown grass. Elaine's rose bushes were untrimmed, choked by weeds. And then I saw them, her garden stones. We'd painted them together one summer, simple flat stones with words like faith, hope, love. One stone, her favorite, read, "Love never dies." It lay cracked in two, half buried in the dirt, the painted words chipped and faded, barely legible. Seeing that broken stone, that simple phrase desecrated, solidified something within me. This wasn't just about legal ownership anymore. This was about restoring dignity, about honoring Elaine's memory. I wouldn't just take back the house, I would heal it. I would fix the broken rail, replant the roses, replace that stone. I would scrub away every trace of Tyler's and Leah's careless disregard. That night, standing in the overgrown backyard of the home I was determined to reclaim, I decided. I would take it all back, every square inch, every memory. But first, I needed to gather every piece of evidence, every lie, every broken promise that had allowed their comfort to be built on my pain. The next few days were a whirlwind of quiet, focused activity. Harold Drayton worked tirelessly, compiling the evidence into an undeniable case. We had the official copy of Elaine's will, clearly stating my lifetime rights to the property. We had the bank manager's testimony and documentation regarding the flag loan application and the forged signature. We had the copy of the bounced check to Vinnie G., hinting at Tyler's desperate financial state and potential illegal entanglements. We even had Leah's panicked voicemails and text messages to me, admitting Tyler's erratic behavior, his paranoia about losing the house, and his fear of this mysterious Vinnie. She had inadvertently become our star witness, documenting his instability and desperation in her own words. Harold spread the files across his conference table, a stack of papers that represented Tyler's downfall. "We've got him, Walt," Harold said, his voice low but confident. "Undue influence in the original deed transfer, violation of the terms of Elaine's will, attempted bank fraud with a forged signature, evidence of significant debt, and potentially illicit dealings. Any judge will see this for what it is." He was right. Looking at the mountain of evidence, the word revenge felt wrong, too small, too angry. This was about restoring balance, about ensuring that actions had consequences. It was justice, slow and methodical, wearing the patient face Elaine had always admired. We were ready for court. And soon, the justice Elaine had ensured, the justice I had patiently pursued, would have a name attached to its consequences: Tyler Kane. The process server delivered the court summons and the full complaint to Tyler at the house on a Tuesday morning. Apparently, Leah was there and accepted the papers. Within an hour, Tyler's pickup truck came roaring into the Miller's gas station lot, kicking up gravel. He slammed the door and stormed towards the entrance, his face contorted with rage. Donna saw him coming and quickly locked the front door, gesturing for me to stay in the back office. Tyler started pounding on the glass. "Dad, get out here. You coward, face me." His voice was muffled but loud enough for everyone inside. A couple of truckers getting coffee, old Mr. Henderson paying for gas, to hear. "You're ruining my life. This is my house. You gave it to me." Donna picked up the phone, her hand hovering over the buttons for 911. I shook my head slightly. Let him expose himself. Let the town see exactly who he was. He kept shouting, accusations and threats tumbling out in a furious stream. "You're doing this out of spite. You senile old fool. You'll pay for this." Finally, after several minutes of fruitless raging, he seemed to run out of steam. He kicked the tire of a nearby car, spat on the sidewalk, and glared at the gas station one last time. "This isn't over," he yelled, then climbed back into his truck and peeled out of the lot, tires squealing. Everyone inside was silent, watching him go. Mr. Henderson shook his head slowly. Some people just dig their own graves, don't they? Donna unlocked the door, her face pale but resolute. He just proved your case for you, Walter. He didn't know it, but his public tantrum was just another piece of evidence. But what he did next, fueled by desperation and fury, proved just how far he had truly fallen from the boy Elaine and I had raised. News of Tyler's outburst at the gas station spread through Harmony Creek like wildfire. Small towns have their own information network, faster and often more accurate than any newspaper. Suddenly, the narrative began to shift. People who had previously avoided my gaze or offered pitying glances now approached me with quiet words of support. Old Man Henderson stopped me outside the post office. Heard what happened at Miller's, Walt. That boy needs a serious wake-up call. You're doing the right thing. Mary Carson, my neighbor who'd turned off her lights that first night, brought over a casserole to the camper. She looked ashamed. Walter, I'm so sorry. We heard Tyler's side first. We should have known better. Elaine raised a good man in you. Acceptance wasn't loud. It was a slow, steady turning of the tide. Donna kept my coffee cup full at the gas station, often adding a pastry on the house. She'd share snippets of conversations she overheard. Folks defending me, questioning Tyler's story, remembering Elaine's kindness and my quiet presence in the community for 40 years. Justice, I realized, wasn't just about courtrooms and legal papers. It was also about the court of public opinion, about the truth slowly finding its way into the light. The quiet echo of support felt more validating than any angry confrontation could have. It didn't need applause. It just needed the steady drumbeat of truth. Still, amidst the growing support, one rumor reached my ears through Donna, something whispered between truckers late one night. A rumor that made my blood run cold and reminded me that Tyler's desperation might still have dangerous consequences. The day of the court hearing arrived crisp and clear, a perfect autumn morning. I put on my only suit, the dark gray one I'd worn to Elaine's funeral, feeling the familiar weight of it on my shoulders. In my pocket, I tucked her small, framed wedding photo, a silent source of strength. Harold met me at the courthouse steps, his briefcase bulging with documents. Inside, the courtroom was quiet, wood-paneled and serious. Tyler sat at the opposing table with a young, nervous-looking public defender. He looked terrible, pale, eyes sunken, hands trembling slightly as he fidgeted with a pen. He wouldn't look at me. When the proceedings began, Harold presented our case with methodical precision. He laid out the timeline of the deed transfer, introduced Elaine's will with its clear stipulation of my lifetime rights, presented the bank manager's affidavit about the forged signature and the fraudulent loan application. He played Leah's voicemails, her panicked voice filling the quiet courtroom. The judge, a stern-faced woman named Judge Miller, listened intently, her expression unreadable. When the image of the forged signature, my signature, clumsily imitated, appeared on the large screen at the front of the courtroom, Judge Miller's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. It was a tiny shift, but in that moment I knew. The truth was undeniable. We had won. The public defender offered a weak rebuttal about misunderstandings and family disputes, but it was clear he had no real defense against the mountain of evidence. But as the judge prepared to deliver her ruling, Tyler suddenly stood up, knocking his chair over backward. His reaction in that courtroom stunned everyone. It's not fair. Tyler's voice cracked, echoing in the suddenly silent courtroom. He pointed a shaking finger at me. He's trying to take everything. The house was mine. He gave it to me. Judge Miller banged her gavel sharply. Mr. Kane, sit down immediately, or you will be held in contempt. Tyler ignored her, his face flushed, eyes wild. He doesn't even need it. He's old. What's he going to do with it? I have a life. I have plans. The public defender tried to pull him back down, whispering urgently, but Tyler shook him off. You all believe his lies, he shouted, sweeping his gaze across the courtroom. He manipulated my mother. He probably forged her will. That accusation, so vile and baseless, sucked the air out of the room. Harold was on his feet instantly. Objection. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Judge Miller's face was like stone. Mr. Kane, one more outburst, and I will have you removed. Bailiff. Two uniformed officers moved towards Tyler. Seeing them, something seemed to break in him. He collapsed back into his chair, burying his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with ragged sobs. Judge Miller waited for silence before speaking, her voice cold and measured. She systematically dismantled the defense's arguments, validated Elaine's will, and cited the clear evidence of fraud. Therefore, she concluded, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Walter Kane. Ownership of the property at 12 Maple Lane is hereby fully reinstated to Mr. Kane. The fraudulent loan obtained by Tyler Kane is declared null and void. Mr. Tyler Kane is ordered to vacate the premises within 30 days. Tyler didn't react, didn't look up. I felt no triumph, only a deep, weary sadness. I stood slowly, nodded once to Harold, and walked out of the courtroom, away from the wreckage of my son's life, out into the bright autumn sunlight. It felt like Elaine's hand was resting gently on my shoulder, proud, perhaps, but impossibly gone. The victory I had patiently worked towards had arrived, but it came with the unexpected, bitter cost of witnessing my own son's complete self-destruction. Returning to the house 30 days later, after the sheriff had confirmed Tyler and Leah had vacated, was harder than I expected. The key Harold gave me felt foreign in my hand. Stepping inside, the silence was heavy, wrong. The place didn't smell like home anymore. It smelled stale, of old beer and neglect. And the destruction, it was worse than I could have imagined. Furniture was overturned, lamps broken. Beer cans and empty food containers littered the floor. Someone, likely Tyler in his rage, had punched holes in the drywall in several rooms. Elaine's portrait above the fireplace was gone. My chest ached with a grief deeper than anger. This wasn't just damage to property. It was a violation, a final act of desecration against the memories held within these walls. How could he? How could the boy we raised do this? I walked numbly through the rooms, surveying the damage. In the kitchen, cupboard doors hung open, dishes smashed on the floor. In the bedroom, drawers were pulled out, clothes strewn everywhere, though thankfully most were theirs, not mine or Elaine's. I sank onto the floor in the middle of the living room, the chaos swirling around me. The victory in court suddenly felt hollow. What had I won? An empty, broken house filled with the ghosts of anger and betrayal. I closed my eyes and whispered her name. Elaine, we're home. For a fleeting moment, I could almost feel her presence, a sense of peace settling over the turmoil. Then, as I pushed myself up, my hand brushed against a loose floorboard near the hearth, one I'd always meant to fix. Something was tucked underneath. Something Tyler must have left behind in his hasty departure. Carefully, I pried up the loose floorboard. Beneath it, nestled in the dusty space between the joists, was a small, tarnished silver locket. I recognized it instantly. It was Elaine's, one her grandmother had given her, the one she always wore until the chain broke a year before she died. I had searched everywhere for it after her passing, assuming it was lost forever. Tyler must have found it, hidden it here. Why? Was it a final, twisted gesture? Or a flicker of buried sentiment? Opening the locket, I found the tiny photos still inside. A picture of me from our army days on one side, and a picture of a baby Tyler, round-cheeked and smiling, on the other. Holding that locket, a tangible piece of Elaine, of our shared past, strengthened my resolve. This house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was a vessel for memory, for love. And I would restore it. I spent the next few months working relentlessly. I patched the drywall, sanded the floors, replaced the broken fixtures. I scrubbed away the grime, painted the walls in the soft blues and creams Elaine had loved. I hired a local crew to fix the sagging gutters and repair the porch railing. Piece by piece, the house began to breathe again. I found Elaine's portrait rolled up and hidden in the back of a closet, unharmed. Hanging it back above the fireplace felt like bringing the heart back into the home. I went to the garden center and bought new rose bushes, planting them exactly where Elaine's had been. I found a local artisan to create a new garden stone, identical to the old one. Love never dies. Each task, each repair, wasn't just fixing damage. It was an act of reclaiming, of honoring. It wasn't about erasing Tyler's presence, but about overlaying it with the enduring presence of the love that had built this place. It wasn't about money or revenge anymore. It was about dignity, mine and Elaine's. Each nail hammered back in place was a quiet promise to myself. I would not let bitterness take root here. I would not let kindness be mistaken for weakness ever again. And then, one crisp fall afternoon, a letter arrived. addressed in my son's shaky, unfamiliar handwriting. The envelope sat on the kitchen counter for a full day before I could bring myself to open it. Tyler's handwriting, usually bold and confident, was hesitant, almost childlike. I finally slid it open with a butter knife, my hands surprisingly steady. The letter inside was short, written on plain notebook paper. "Dad," it began. The simple word, one I hadn't heard from him in months, felt both familiar and foreign. "I'm writing this from rehab. Got court-ordered here after everything. Probably where I should have been a long time ago. I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything. I know what I did to you, to Mom's memory, to the house. It was wrong. More than wrong. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. Maybe someday I'll understand how I became that person, but right now, all I feel is shame. I just hope that maybe, someday, you'll remember that I was your son once, before I messed everything up." That was it. No excuses, no justifications, just a raw, broken acknowledgement of his actions. I read it several times, the words blurring slightly. Was it sincere? A manipulative ploy? Or the first tentative step of someone truly hitting bottom? I didn't know. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it underneath Elaine's portrait on the mantelpiece. Some words, I realized, weren't meant to be answered, not immediately anyway. They were meant to settle, to be weighed against actions, to simply linger in the quiet space between what was and what might someday be. My anger had cooled into something resembling weary peace. The fight was over. The house was mine. But fate, it seemed, wasn't quite finished with the Kane family just yet. A few weeks later, just as the first snowflakes began to dust the bare branches outside, there was a tentative knock on my newly painted front door. I opened it to find Leah standing on the porch, looking smaller and more uncertain than I remembered. Her usual defiant posture was gone, replaced by a nervous fidgeting with the strap of her purse. "Mr. Kane." "Walter," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." She perched awkwardly on the edge of the armchair, avoiding eye contact. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For how things were at the house. For not seeing what Tyler was becoming. She finally looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "He's in rehab," she confirmed, her voice catching. "A 90-day program up near South Bend. He called me last week. Sounds different. Quieter." I just nodded, letting her speak. "He told me about the letter he sent you. He didn't ask me to come here, but I felt I should. He's finally realizing what he did, Walter. Really realizing it." "That's good," I said softly, and I meant it. Everyone needs a chance to rebuild something in their life, whether it's a house or themselves. Leah seemed surprised by my lack of bitterness. She stood up, twisting the purse strap again. "Well, I just wanted you to know." As she reached the door, she paused. "He asked me to tell you. He asked me to say he hopes you fixed the garden stone. Mom's favorite." My heart stopped. The garden stone. How did he? He must have seen it broken before he left. That small detail, that specific memory of Elaine, felt more significant than the entire letter. That evening, after Leah left, I walked out to the backyard. The new garden stone sat nestled amongst the dormant rose bushes, the words, "Love never dies," clear and bright under the moonlight. Tyler remembered. Amidst the anger, the debt, the desperation, some part of him still remembered what mattered to his mother. I went back inside and turned on the porch light. It cast a warm, welcoming glow across the front yard, illuminating the newly repaired railing, the neatly swept walkway. It was the same light that had been deliberately extinguished the night Tyler threw me out, the night the neighbors closed their doors. Now, it burned steadily, a quiet beacon. I saw curtains twitch in the Carson house, a silhouette move in the Miller's window across the street. They were watching. I didn't wave or make any gesture. Some lessons, some changes, don't require grand pronouncements. They just need time to be seen, to be understood in the steady, quiet light. Forgiveness wasn't a switch I could flip, not for Tyler, not for the neighbors. But maybe, just maybe, the light signified a possibility, a path forward that wasn't paved with anger. Later that night, long after the street had fallen silent, there was another knock on my door. Soft, hesitant, completely different from the desperate pounding months ago. I opened the door to find Mary Carson standing there, holding a covered dish. Steam rose from beneath the foil. "John sent me over," she said, her eyes avoiding mine. "It's beef stew. Figured you might not feel like cooking. She held it out. We wanted to say we're sorry, Walter. For that night. We weren't thinking right. We let fear, or maybe just awkwardness, get the better of us. It wasn't neighborly. It wasn't right. I took the dish, the warmth seeping into my hands. Thank you, Mary. Tell John the first appreciate it. She nodded, still looking at the porch floor. The light looks nice, she said softly. It's good to see it on again. She turned and hurried back across the lawn. I closed the door, the aroma of the stew filling the hallway. It smelled like community, like the tentative rebuilding of bridges burned. The house felt peaceful now. The scent of fresh paint had replaced the stale odor of neglect. The wind chime outside, the one Elaine loved, tinkled softly in the night breeze. The slow, steady rhythm of the grandfather clock in the hall marked the passing moments. I sat in my armchair, the one Elaine always claimed was the most comfortable, and felt a sense of quiet settle over me. I wasn't angry anymore. The bitterness had faded, replaced by a weary understanding. I had walked through the fire of humiliation, betrayal, and homelessness, and somehow, I had emerged not hardened, but perhaps stronger in a quieter way. That was the real victory, wasn't it? Not just getting the house back, but getting myself back. And yet, I sensed there was one last act of closure still waiting, something needed to fully turn the page. The first morning of spring arrived with sunshine slanting through the newly cleaned windows, warming the polished wooden floors. After breakfast, I took a single white rose from the vase on the counter, the first bloom from the bushes I'd replanted, and walked out to the garden. The air was cool, but held the promise of warmth. Birds chattered in the branches of the old maple tree. I knelt beside Elaine's garden stone, the one that now read, "Love never dies, clear and whole again." I gently placed the rose beside it, its petals perfect against the gray stone. "We made it back, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice thick. "It took a while, but we're home." The wind stirred, carrying the soft, melodic notes of her wind chime from the porch. It sounded like music, like peace. My son had taken my home, stripped me of my pride, and nearly broken my spirit. Neighbors had turned their backs, leaving me utterly alone. But I hadn't crumbled. I had found strength in unexpected kindness, in the law, and in the enduring power of Elaine's love. I had taken it all back, the house, my dignity, my peace of mind, not with shouting or anger, but quietly, patiently, righteously. And in doing so, I had finally, completely, come home.